The year was 2417. Humanity had found its precarious footing in the vast, indifferent cosmos. We were not galactic titans, nor were we a burgeoning empire of conquest. Our starships, while reliable and efficient, were not the fastest or most heavily armed. Our colonies, spread thinly across 100 systems, hummed with a quiet determination, reflecting a species that had learned the hard lessons of sustainability and resilience on a recovering Earth. What truly set us apart, however, was our peculiar, almost irrational, attachment to concepts like individual value and dignity, concepts often dismissed as sentimental luxuries in a galaxy built on ruthless efficiency. In the grand cosmic tapestry, life was a resource, and like any resource, it was managed. For the Stoic, crystalline Xylos, masters of pure energy and intricate logical constructs, an individual's value was directly proportional to their energetic output and their contribution to the collective processing network. When a Xylos reached the end of its optimal processing cycle, when its crystalline matrix began to degrade, its energy transfers becoming inefficient, it was a simple, logical matter. The failing Xylos would willingly merge its remaining coherent energy into the communal flow, its consciousness dissipating into the greater whole, its physical form recycled into new crystalline growth. There was no pain, no lament, only the cool, precise calculation of optimized energy expenditure. Sentimentality was a logic. The ancient, bioengineered Thalian hegemony, living in symbiotic harmony with their vast, sentient starships and planet-spanning biospheres, viewed individual life as a component of the larger, interconnected ecosystem. An aging Thalian, its organic system slowing, its ability to contribute to the complex biorhythms of its living ship diminishing, would undergo reintegration. Its biological matter and energy would be gently, organically absorbed back into the ship's living matrix, feeding new growth, new life. The process was seen as natural, a necessary part of the cycle, like a leaf falling to nourish the tree. There was no concept of individual suffering, only the continuous flow of the collective. To resist reintegration was to disrupt the harmony of the whole. For the pragmatic, hypercapitalist Cthar collective, existence was an endless negotiation of profit and loss. An individual Cthar, its multiple limbs slowing, its sensory organs dulling, its capacity for resource extraction or trade diminishing, became an inefficient unit. Such units were gently but firmly guided to repurposing centers. There, their biological components would be meticulously harvested for medical research, their neural patterns studied for data optimization, their remaining energy converted into usable power. It was the ultimate recycling, an economic imperative to ensure no potential value was wasted. The Cthar viewed it as an act of enlightened self-interest, ensuring the collective's perpetual growth. Sentiment was a liability. Even the enigmatic Lumina, beings of pure, resonant light, seemed to transcend such human concepts. When a Lumina's light began to dim, its vibrations faltering, it would simply drift away from the communal nexus, its light fading into the vast interstellar void. It was not discarded, merely ceased to be. The Lumina existed beyond physical form, beyond individual consciousness and the human sense, operating on planes of pure energy and resonance. The concept of physical decline or compassionate care was, to them, utterly meaningless. Into this galaxy of cold logic and utilitarian ends stepped humanity. We had seen our own elders, their bodies failing, but their spirits bright, treated with reverence. We had built institutions around comfort, around memory, around the sacred final moments of a life. On Earth, the concept of hospice was not just a medical service. It was a philosophy, a testament to the belief that every life, no matter how brief or how diminished by age or illness, held intrinsic, inalienable value, right up until its very last breath. This profound philosophical chasm was something the Terran Commonwealth, still finding its way through complex galactic diplomacy, had yet to fully grasp, until one incident shattered their naive assumptions and laid bare the stark reality of the cosmic calculus. Ambassador Elena Petrova, a seasoned human diplomat, was on a routine trade negotiation of the Cthar collective deep in the bustling, crystalline city of Corvell. The Cthar were discussing a complex algorithm for optimizing asteroid mining yields, their multi-jointed limbs clicking rhythmically, their sensory organs pulsing with data. Suddenly, a small, elderly Cthar, its carapace dull, its movements slow and halting, stumbled past the observation window of the conference room. It seemed disoriented, its internal light patterns flickering erratically. Without a pause in their negotiations, a younger, more efficient Cthar unit immediately moved towards the elder. There was no anger, no malice, only clinical detachment. With practiced ease, the younger Cthar activated a subtle energy field, gently guiding the elder towards a designated repurposing port. The elder Cthar did not resist. It simply shuffled along, its light dimming even further. Elena watched in stunned silence as the elder Cthar disappeared behind a sealed, metallic hatch. The Cthar negotiators resumed their clicking, their focus unbroken. "Forgive the interruption, Ambassador." The lead Cthar negotiator clicked smoothly. An inefficient unit. Swift and efficient repurposing ensures optimal resource allocation for the collective. Now about the refined unobtainium tariffs. Elena felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She had read the briefings, seen the data on galactic resource management, but seeing it with her own eyes, the utterly devoid of sentiment removal of a living, sentient being, was a stark, horrifying revelation. It wasn't cruelty, not as humans understood it. It was simply logic. She finished the negotiations, her mind reeling. Back on her starship, the TCS emissary, she immediately called an emergency session with the Terran Council. "They don't understand," she relayed, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. "They don't understand what it means to be frail, to be old, to be human. To them, a failing life is a waste, a burden, a resource to be reallocated. We need to show them. We need to build them a different kind of ending." Her words hung heavy in the silence of the council chambers. The concept of compassionate end-of-life care in the midst of a galaxy obsessed with efficiency seemed absurd, idealistic, and perhaps profoundly dangerous. Yet the image of that old Cthar, shuffling willingly towards its repurposing, haunted Elena. Humanity had learned to clean cosmic dust, to nurture alien young. Could they now teach a galaxy to die with dignity? The images Elena Petrova brought back from Corvell played on a loop in the Terran Council chambers. The raw, unadorned footage of the elderly Cthar being guided to the repurposing port, its flickering internal lights signifying its fading vitality, sparked an unprecedented wave of debate across the Commonwealth. To the cold, rational eye of galactic policy, it was just resource management. To human eyes, it was an act of quiet horror. "We have always faced our end with family, with memories, with comfort," argued Dr. Julian Vance, a leading gerontologist and bioethicist, his voice resonating with conviction. "We celebrate life, even as it ebbs. We do not discard it as if it were faulty machinery." Senator Anya Sharma, known for her pragmatic approach but also her deep humanitarian work, countered, "This is a fundamental cultural difference, Doctor. To them, it is not callousness, it is efficiency. It is the removal of burden, the reutilization of resources for the collective. To impose our values would be an act of cultural imperialism." "Is compassion an imposition?" Elena Petrova retorted, her voice low but firm. "Or is it universal truth that some species simply haven't discovered? We are not talking about dietary habits or social rituals. We are talking about the final moments of a sentient being's existence. Is there no common ground for valuing that last spark of consciousness?" The debate raged for weeks. Arguments of galactic economics, political non-interference, and the sheer logistical impossibility of offering such inefficient care on a galactic scale clashed with powerful moral imperatives. The Xylos, having observed the Terran debates through their vast informational networks, transmitted a concise message. "Your species exhibits high-level emotional instability regarding logical life cycle termination. This is a non-optimal trait for galactic interaction." The Cthar simply transmitted updated profitability metrics on repurposing, as if to underscore their point. Only the Thalians remained silent, their sentient ships absorbing the raw emotional data, processing the profound implications. It was a personal story, however, that turned the tide. Admiral Haku Tanaka, a legendary figure in the Terran fleet, a decorated veteran of the Sol system's early expansion, was in the advanced stages of neurodegenerative decay. His mind, once a strategic marvel, was slowly fading. Yet he was surrounded by family, by his crew, by the comforting hum of his flagship, the TCS Valiant. His final days were filled with quiet conversations, shared memories, and the dignified acceptance of his transition. "I am dying, friends," Admiral Tanaka projected from his sickbed in orbit around Earth. His voice, weak but clear, beamed across the Commonwealth. "My body fails. My mind dims. But I am not discarded. I am cherished. My memories are honored. My life's purpose is not erased by its ending. This is the human way. This is what we must offer." His passing, dignified and profoundly personal, became a powerful symbol. It wasn't about saving resources. It was about honoring a life. The Council, moved by the Admiral's quiet strength, made a decision that would redefine humanity's place in the stars. "We will build a hospice," Speaker Lena Petrova announced, her voice resonating with unwavering resolve. "Not a hospital, not a research facility, but a place of solace. A beacon. A galactic hospice. It will be dedicated to offering comfort, dignity, and a compassionate end-of-life experience to any sentient being who seeks it, regardless of species or origin." The sheer audacity of the plan was breathtaking. It would be a colossal undertaking, a drain on resources, and an affront to galactic norms. But humanity, with its stubborn optimism and deep-seated empathy, saw it as an imperative. Commander Jian Li, who had led the Wayfarer to the Ethery, was now tasked with an even more daunting challenge, designing and building the first galactic hospice. She assembled a team that reflected humanity's best. Dr. Julian Vance, the gerontologist, who would lead the medical and psychological care protocols. Dr. Anya Sharma, the linguist and cultural anthropologist, whose wisdom would be crucial in bridging alien philosophies. And Captain Yara Kowalski, the gruff but brilliant engineer from the Cosmic Janitor Initiative, who could build anything, even a sanctuary in the void. The design of the first hospice, named the Respite, was meticulously crafted. It wouldn't be a sterile, utilitarian structure. It would be a living vessel, a serene sanctuary. Its primary sections would be biomes designed to replicate various natural planetary environments: lush forests, calm oceans, whispering deserts, serene mountainscapes, allowing individuals to spend their final moments in settings reminiscent of comfort and beauty. Its internal systems would filter cosmic dust, yes, but also create microclimates perfectly suited to alien biologies, from extreme temperatures to unique atmospheric compositions. Crucially, the Respite would be staffed not by soldiers or scientists focused solely on data, but by compassionate individuals trained in xenopsychology, palliative care, and cultural sensitivity. They would learn to communicate not just through universal translators, but through empathy, touch where appropriate, and a deep respect for alien forms of consciousness. Musicians would play soothing melodies. Storytellers would share narratives of life and purpose. Artists would create beauty, all tailored to the specific sensory perception of each species. The initial budget was staggering. The logistical challenges were immense, and the galactic powers remained skeptical. The Xylos continued to calculate its inefficiency. The Cthars sought to profit from its construction materials. The Thalians watched with cautious, ancient curiosity. But for humanity, it wasn't about profit or power. It was about principle. It was about creating a place where the final chapter of any sentient being's story was written not with cold logic or utilitarian disposal, but with warmth, dignity, and profound tenderness. The Respite would not be a warship, but a beacon, a challenge to the very calculus of the galaxy. The construction of the Respite was a testament to humanity's unwavering commitment. It was designed not as a typical starship, but as a mobile, self-sustaining sanctuary. Its core structure resembled a massive, segmented flower, with 8 vast, interconnected petal modules radiating from a central biospheric hub. Each petal was an adaptable habitat, capable of replicating diverse planetary environments, from the humid, bioluminescent jungles for possible Thalian visitors to arid, high-radiation zones for species adapted to stellar nurseries. Captain Yarek Kowalski, tasked with its construction, found himself pushing the boundaries of Terran engineering. "It's not just a ship, Commander Lee," he grumbled good-naturedly, overseeing a team of human and automated drones meticulously welding colossal hull plates. "It's a floating ecosystem, a memory palace, and frankly, a logistical nightmare." Yet, the pride in his voice was unmistakable. The central biospheric hub, designed by Dr. Julian Vance's team, was a marvel of bioengineering. It housed a spectrum of Earth-based flora and fauna, carefully cultivated and quarantined, serving as both a source of comfort for human staff and a living library of environmental templates for alien integration. Beyond the technical challenges, the philosophical ones were immense. How do you design comfort for a species that communicates through light, or dignity for one whose body naturally reconfigures after death? Dr. Anya Sharma, the lead cultural anthropologist, established a xenopsychology division dedicated to understanding alien concepts of life, death, and consciousness. They compiled vast databases of species rituals, beliefs, and sensory perceptions. "The goal isn't to impose our concepts of peace or memory," Sharma patiently explained to her diverse human staff. "It's to translate our compassion into their language of comfort. For some, peace might be perfect stillness. For others, it might be a chorus of familiar vibrations. For some, memory is held in scent, for others, in light patterns." The staffing of the respite was perhaps the most crucial element. It wasn't about finding the most skilled engineers or doctors, but the most empathetic. Over 5,000 volunteers, drawn from across the Terran Commonwealth, underwent rigorous training. They were former teachers, artists, botanists, philosophers, as well as doctors and nurses. They learned not just xenobiology and crisis intervention, but deep listening, adaptive communication, and the profound art of simply being present for another being's end. Many of them had experienced loss on a personal level, a shared human experience that, ironically, made them uniquely qualified. While the respite was under construction, a subtle shift occurred in galactic perception. The Xylos, always gathering data, noted the immense volunteer numbers and the unusual dedication to a project with no obvious tactical or economic benefit. This Terran emotional investment, as they termed it, was statistically baffling, yet undeniably present. The Kthar, while still dismissive of the lack of profit, began to view the respite as a peculiar demonstration of Terran soft power. They speculated on potential future trade opportunities for emotional support services, calculating projected market shares. The Thalians, however, truly understood. Their ancient ships, vast living minds, sensed the underlying intent behind the respite. They recognized the echo of their own collective reverence for life, albeit expressed through a different, more individualistic lens. They even offered limited assistance, providing insights into bioluminescent flora that could thrive in diverse environments, a subtle nod of approval. After a grueling 3 years of construction and preparation, the respite was complete. A colossal, organic-looking vessel hung silently in orbit, a testament to a radical idea. Its inner biomes hummed with life, its adaptive habitats ready. Commander Jian Li, now captain of the respite, stood on its central observation deck, looking out at the endless starfield. "We are ready," she announced to her crew, her voice resonating with a quiet dignity. "We offer no weapons, no trade agreements. Only solace. Only a gentle hand at the edge of the void. May the stars guide us." The respite initiated its first journey, moving slowly along established galactic trade routes, announcing its presence not with a boast, but with a quiet, resonant invitation across universal frequencies. To any sentient being seeking comfort in their final moments, we offer solace. We offer peace. We offer dignity. We are the respite. The galactic response was, for a long time, silence. Then, hesitant, almost imperceptible whisper from the void began to answer. For months, the respite drifted along the edges of well-traveled galactic lanes, its subtle broadcast a constant, gentle hum in the cacophony of interstellar commerce. Most species ignored it. The Kthar considered a navigational hazard, the Xylos a statistical anomaly. The first response came not from a government, but from an individual. A single, small Kthar freighter, its cargo bays full of raw alloys, signaled the respite. Its captain, a grizzled old Kthar named Click, whose internal light patterns flickered with age and fatigue, had heard the human broadcast. He was not inefficient enough for mandatory repurposing, but he was tired. So deeply, profoundly tired. His sensory organs were dulling, his efficiency rating plummeting. He was a burden to his clan, a shadow of his former calculating self. His family had offered him the repurposing port many times, but an ancient, almost forgotten Kthar instinct, a vestigial spark of individuality, hesitated. He had heard the humans spoke of peace. He didn't understand it, but the word resonated with the forgotten longing. Click was the first. His arrival was tense. He shuffled into the respite's reception chamber, his limbs trembling slightly, observing the lush, green biome and the strangely soft human forms with wary, dulled eyes. Dr. Anya Sharma met him, her calm presence and the universal translator carefully conveying her sincerity. "Welcome, Click," Sharma said, her voice a soft cadence. "You are safe here. You are honored here." Click clicked rapidly. "Honor. I am inefficient. A burden. My family, they need my components. My data." Sharma gently guided him towards a prepared habitat, a comfortable, slightly arid chamber designed to replicate a Kthar nesting hollow, complete with the subtle vibrations that soothed their nervous systems. There was no pressure, no urgency. Human caregivers, working in quiet shifts, simply were. They offered nutrient paste tailored to Kthar metabolism, adjusted ambient light to Click's preference, and spoke softly, sharing stories of human perseverance, translated into Kthar light patterns and clicks. Click spent days in bewildered silence. He waited for the demands, the calculations, the harvesting. Instead, he found only quiet presence. A human botanist showed him how a delicate desert flower unfurled at dawn. A human musician played soft, resonating tones that vibrated through his carapace, something akin to comfort. He began to share fragmented memories of his trading routes, of the vastness of space, of the satisfaction of a perfectly brokered deal. The humans listened, truly listened, their light patterns conveying empathy. The transformation in Click was gradual but profound. The dullness in his carapace began to recede, replaced by a faint, steady glow. His movements, while still slow, gained a quiet dignity. He was not healing in the human sense, but he was living his final moments with the richness he had never known. When his final moments came, weeks later, he simply ceased to be, his internal light fading peacefully, surrounded by the soft hum of the habitat and the quiet, respectful presence of the human caregivers. His passing was not a repurposing, but a gentle departure. His final, faint thought pattern, picked up by Sharma's xenopsychological instruments, was a single, clear resonance: peace. The word reverberated through the respite's crew, and then, through Sharma's careful translations, to the wider galaxy. Click's story, amplified by the data collected by the respite systems, data that showed not only the efficiency of the hospice's resource usage, remarkably low, due to passive systems and dedicated staff, but also the profound, measurable impact on the individual's final moments, began to turn heads. The next guests were a small family of Meklar, crystalline beings known for their rigid adherence to societal function. One of their number, a matron whose internal energy lattice was deteriorating, had been slated for mandatory reintegration into the collective, but her maiden child, witnessing the silent, dignified passing of Click through monitored galactic news channels, had dared the unthinkable. They applied for solace at the respite. It was an act of profound heresy for their species. The Meklar matron, known as Kthra, was accustomed to cool, analytical logic. Her initial experience in the respite was one of almost physical discomfort. The human caregiver's emotional warmth was alien, their soft voices confusing. But Dr. Julian Vance, with infinite patience, presented her with scientific analogies. He showed her how the human brain continued to produce unique chemical signals even at its end, signals that, while not efficient for processing, held the intricate tapestry of a life. He showed her how the inefficiency of a slowing heartbeat allowed for a different kind of beauty, a quiet wisdom. For Kfra, peace came not from emotional comfort, but from a new logical understanding. She realized that her remaining moments, though not energetically optimal, were profoundly unique. They held the sum total of her individual experiences, a data set that, once gone, could never be replicated. The humans were not trying to prolong her life, but to preserve the integrity of her ending. This resonated with a deep, unspoken Meklar understanding of data purity. When Kfra's light finally faded, her family observed, not with cold detachment, but with a quiet reverence for the unique data stream that had been her life, preserved and honored to its last bite. Their final message to the respite: unquantifiable value observed. Request protocols for individual memory preservation. The rivals became a slow trickle, then a steady stream. A Thalian elder whose bioship was nearing its natural end-of-life cycle, and who, for the first time, felt a deep fear of true reintegration, sought out the respite. Here, surrounded by meticulously recreated alien biomes, its final consciousness was allowed to explore ancient memories, guided by human empathetic resonance. It did not merge with the ship. It merged with its own, cherished past gently. The respite became a place of profound transformation. It was not a waiting room for death, but a vibrant sanctuary where lives, regardless of species, were honored to their very last breath. The humans learned to communicate in ways no universal translator could capture, through shared silence, through the gentle hum of a specially calibrated chamber, through the subtle scent of a recreated alien flower, through the simple, profound act of witnessing. The galaxy, accustomed to discarding the old and the weak, was beginning to watch and listen to the whispers of peace emanating from a peculiar, unassuming ship called the Respite. The concept of inefficiency was being challenged, not by argument, but by example. The stories of Click, Kfra, and the Thalian Elder, whispered through galactic comms and amplified by the nascent network of compassion-focused media established by humanity, began to resonate. The Respite was no longer just a curious anomaly. It was becoming a destination. Its waiting list grew, comprised not just of weary individuals, but often by worried family units, daring to defy established societal norms for the promise of a different kind of ending. The Xylos, though still adhering to their core logical principles, found their matrices subtly perturbed by the accumulating data from the Respite. The unquantifiable value observed in the Meklar's memory preservation protocols was particularly baffling. Their energy transfer efficiency, while paramount, could not account for the emotional resonance documented. They began to send more sophisticated, covert observation probes, trying to deconstruct the human variable in end-of-life care. They couldn't replicate compassion, but they could analyze its effects. And the effects were undeniable: a reduction in distress signals, an increase in peaceful cessation, and perhaps most surprisingly, a subtle, positive emotional feedback loop in the surviving family units, which, while illogical, did improve their own processing efficiency in the long run. The Kthar Collective, driven by profit, recognized the emergence of a new market: end-of-life services. They dubbed it, ironically. While they still maintained their repurposing centers for the majority, a niche demand was growing for Terran model dignified cessation. They started to offer premium repurposing packages that included elements inspired by the Respite, recreated environmental simulations, individualized nutrient formulas, and even, grudgingly, a final memory data link that allowed families to re-experience curated moments of their loved one's life. It was a crude imitation, but it was a beginning. Some Kthar even began discreetly sending their own frail elders to the Respite, claiming extended research assignments. The Thalian hegemony embraced the Respite with quiet reverence. Their vast, sentient ships began to share ancient, forgotten lore on the subtle energies of transition, on the soul flow between life and what lay beyond. They offered their wisdom to Dr. Julian Vance's team, enhancing their understanding of alien consciousness at the moment of dissolution. They even began to adapt their own reintegration processes, making them more gentle, more mindful of individual experience, weaving moments of memory and personal farewell into the collective absorption. It was a profound evolution for an ancient, seemingly immutable culture. Within the respite, the human staff perfected their unique brand of compassionate care. They developed protocols for sensory immersion, creating bespoke environments for each species. For Illumina, whose light was dimming, they created a chamber of pure, resonant darkness, punctuated by subtle, comforting light pulses that mimicked the gentle rhythm of galactic nurseries. For a multi-limbed, highly tactile species, they devised soft, vibrating hammocks and offered soothing textures. The breakthroughs were often subtle, deeply personal. A xylos, its crystalline form fractured by an incurable disease, found solace in a chamber filled with precisely replicated harmonic resonances, reminiscent of its youth. Guided by human musicians who learned to play xylos melodies not from data, but from intuition. A Kthar, once solely defined by its trade deals, rediscovered a latent love for abstract mathematics, spending its final weeks solving complex, non-profitable equations, its mind finally free of the burden of efficiency. A Thalian, whose individual consciousness usually faded into the collective, was gently guided to retain its unique essence, its memories and experiences lovingly preserved in a shared human Thalian memory archive. The staff learned that dignity was not a one-size-fits-all concept. For some, it was quiet solitude. For others, it was shared stories. For some, it was the cessation of all sensation. For others, it was the gentle stimulation of a beloved scent. The human capacity for empathy, for truly seeing the other, proved to be their most powerful tool. The death of an individual in the respite became an event of quiet ceremony, witnessed not just by the human staff, but often by alien family members who had previously viewed such moments with cold detachment. They observed the human rituals of mourning, of remembrance, of comfort. They saw that an end could be filled with meaning, not just an empty void. The ripple effect was undeniable. On a distant Kthar mining colony, a younger Kthar unit, witnessing its own aged grandparent enter a newly established, if still rudimentary, comfort cessation zone, inspired by Terran models, chose to spend a few moments simply being present, rather than immediately returning to its duties. This small, illogical act, repeated across countless systems, slowly began to redefine the very fabric of galactic society. Inefficiency was no longer a purely negative term. It gained a new, quiet connotation of inherent vulnerability and the potential for a different kind of value. The concept of compassion had found a foothold, blooming slowly but inexorably across the vast, logical galaxy. The burgeoning influence of the respite was no longer confined to hushed whispers and curious observations. It had become undeniable force, a moral beacon that, while not wielding weapons or economic might, exerted a profound, almost spiritual pressure on galactic civilization. The debates in galactic councils shifted, subtly but irrevocably. No longer was the discussion purely about resource optimization. Now the Terran variable, the quantifiable impact of compassionate care, had to be factored in. The Xylos, after centuries of meticulous data collection and simulation, were forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Their perfect logical systems had a blind spot. The emotional resonance generated by the respite's care, while initially deemed inefficient, led to unexpected long-term societal stability among species that adopted even rudimentary elements of its philosophy. Stress levels in populations decreased, leading to fewer internal conflicts and, surprisingly, an increase in collaborative innovation. The Xylos, recognizing a new form of system optimization, began to integrate dignity protocols into their own life cycle planning. They established specialized resonance chambers where failing Xylos could experience tailored energetic harmonies, preserving their individual conscious patterns in a unique, non-collective state. until final dissipation. It wasn't human empathy, but it was their logical approximation of valuing the individual's final subjective experience. The Cthar Collective, driven by market demand and the undeniable success of their premium cessation services, found themselves in a curious paradox. The very act of offering dignified care, initially a cynical profit venture, began to subtly alter their own cultural understanding. Younger Cthar, exposed to the concept of honoring their elders' final moments, started to question the absolute supremacy of pure efficiency. The repurposing centers didn't vanish, but they evolved. New legislation, cautiously introduced, mandated periods of comfort respite before repurposing, allowing failing units to engage in preferred activities, whether it be final calculations, re-experiencing cherished memories, or simply resting in silence. The cold clicks of their language gained new, subtle inflections for concepts like solace and remembrance. The Thalian hegemony, as predicted, became humanity's strongest advocate for the Galactic Hospice movement. Their ancient ships, vast sentient minds, pulsed with approval and offered their unparalleled wisdom on biospiritual integration. They collaborated with human scientists on new forms of memory flora, plants that could absorb and beautifully rebroadcast an individual's life experiences as light and scent patterns after death, allowing the Thalian concept of reintegration to gain a richer, more individualistic dimension. The circle of life for them now encompassed not just absorption, but also tender, respectful farewell. The respite itself expanded, not into a military fleet, but into a network of smaller, specialized solace satellites, each perfectly attuned to the unique physiological and cultural needs of specific species clusters. Human caregivers, now vastly experienced, trained a new generation of multi-species staff. Xylos who learned to interpret biorhythms as emotional cues, Cthar who surprisingly found solace in tending memory gardens, and Thalians who understood the nuanced beauty of a fading life's last resonance. The galaxy was learning. It was learning that there were values beyond energy output and profit margins. It was learning that vulnerability was not a weakness, but a profound state of being that deserved reverence. It was learning that death was not an end to be optimized, but a journey to be walked with dignity. A pivotal moment came during a galactic summit. A diplomatic dispute between a rigid, duty-bound insectoid species and a free-spirited, nomadic avian species threatened to erupt into conflict. Negotiations faltered. Then a human diplomat, Ambassador Alani Vance, a descendant of Dr. Julian Vance, spoke. She didn't offer a strategic compromise or resource allocation. Instead, she spoke of the last flight of the matriarch, a story of an elderly avian matriarch who, having reached the respite, had been given a final, symbolic flight through a recreated star field, accompanied by human and ethereal caregivers, her dying song filling the simulated void, a moment of profound peace. The insectoid delegates, rigid in their duty, understood the concept of fulfilling a life's purpose to its very last act. The avian species, seeing their traditions honored in a universal context, found common ground. The conflict was averted, not through force, but through shared understanding of dignity. This was the quiet power of the respite's legacy. It wasn't just about how one died. It was about how one lived, and how a galaxy could learn to value life beyond its measurable utility. Humanity had not fought a war, had not conquered systems. Instead, they had introduced a profound tenderness into the cold calculus of the cosmos, a whisper of compassion that resonated louder than any armada. The success of the respite and its network of solace satellites sent ripples far beyond individual species practices, subtly altering the very social fabric of the galaxy. The Terran effect, as xenologists began to call it, was studied, debated, and grudgingly implemented. It wasn't a revolution, but an evolution, driven by the undeniable, measurable benefits of compassionate care. For species like the Cthar, the shifts were deeply pragmatic. While their core ethos remained profit and efficiency, the human concept of dignified cessation had introduced a fascinating new variable, emotional return on investment ROI. They discovered that Cthar who had family members or clan elders experience a peaceful passing at a Terran model hospice exhibited higher long-term productivity, reduced stress-related inefficiencies, and even a measurable increase in creative problem-solving. This wasn't sentimentality, this was good business. Consequently, Thar corporations began to invest heavily in comfort facilities adjacent to their repurposing centers, not out of altruism, but out of a newly calculated, self-serving enlightenment. They even developed intricate algorithms to tailor final experiences based on an individual's life's accomplishments, providing a legacy optimization that mimicked human remembrance. The Xylos, ever logical, found themselves in a unique dilemma. Their dignity protocols had been implemented, allowing failing Xylos to dissipate their unique energetic patterns into specific memory crystals, separate from the collective. However, they found that younger Xylos, when exposed to the Terran concept of active, comforting presence, sometimes exhibited unexpected harmonic anomalies, a softening of their rigid logical flows, a deeper appreciation for complex, nonlinear patterns. This was both a concern for maintaining optimal Xylos function and a source of profound fascination. They initiated joint research projects with Terran xenopsychologists to study the emotional contagion effect, hoping to harness its efficiency-enhancing properties without fully compromising their logical purity. It was a step, however small, towards acknowledging the value of something beyond pure logic. The Thalian hegemony, already aligned with the human philosophy, moved furthest and fastest. Their ancient bioships began to incorporate memory groves within their vast living structures, where individuals nearing reintegration could spend their final cycles amidst specially cultivated flora that resonated with their life's experiences, allowing for a more conscious, individual farewell before merging with the collective consciousness of the ship. This created a richer, more nuanced collective memory, reinforcing the Thalian belief that individual lives enriched the whole, even in their passing. They dispatched more of their eldest ships to patrol the galactic frontiers, not as warships, but as beacons, subtly guiding vessels in distress towards the Solace satellites. Even the reclusive Lumina seemed to acknowledge the shift. While they never directly interacted, distant supernova events far from charted space occasionally flared with complex, beautiful light patterns that, according to Terran xenolinguists, subtly mimicked the peaceful dissipation signals recorded by the Respite's instruments. It was a cosmic echo, a silent nod of acknowledgement from beings who transcended physical form, suggesting that the concept of a dignified end resonated even in the ethereal. New galactic policies began to take shape. While not mandatory, galactic trade routes began incentivizing ships with Respite certification, indicating their willingness to divert for medical emergencies or to transport vulnerable individuals. A universal standard for distress signals was established, now including a specific protocol for requesting compassionate care. The concept of abandonment in space, once a common fate for the infirm, slowly began to be viewed with galactic disapproval. The ripple effect wasn't just in policy, it was in culture. On many worlds, subtle shifts occurred. Thar children, instead of being immediately taught the efficiency of repurposing, were now exposed to stories of the last lullabies of the elders. Xylos youths, instead of only meditating on logical perfection, sometimes contemplated the unique, fleeting beauty of an individual energy signature, the raw, unfiltered grief and gratitude expressed by species who had experienced the Respite's care were broadcast across the universal infinites, creating a powerful, unifying emotional current. Humanity didn't preach or convert. They simply offered. They continued to refine their methods, to learn new alien biologies, to understand myriad expressions of peace and remembrance. They didn't seek to change the fundamental nature of other species, but to introduce a choice, a different perspective on the ultimate inevitable. And in doing so, they had not just built hospices, they had subtly begun to rebuild the very moral compass of the galaxy, one gentle farewell at a time. The echoes of dignity and compassion were beginning to resonate across the void, turning a cold, utilitarian cosmos into a place with a little more heart. Centuries blurred into millennia. The initial ripple from the Respite had become a profound, irreversible current. The Galactic Hospice network, once a daring human experiment, had blossomed into an interspecies confederation, comprising thousands of solace satellites, mobile havens, and even dedicated planetary zones managed by a diverse array of species trained in the Terran method. Humanity no longer held exclusive stewardship. They had seeded a philosophy that had taken root in the fertile grounds of countless alien cultures. This shift was most profoundly evident in the Great Confluence, an unprecedented gathering of galactic powers held every 5 centuries. Historically, these summits were arenas of strategic alliances, resource negotiations, and power plays. This particular confluence held within the vast, tranquil biospheres of a newly designated neutral sanctuary world, a world meticulously terraformed by human, Thalian, and Etheri efforts, felt different. The air itself seemed to hum with a subtle reverence for life. Ambassador Alani Vance, now a venerable white-haired figure, her eyes still sparkling with the compassion that had defined her lineage, sat among the human delegation. Beside her, a Xylos diplomat, its crystalline form now subtly iridescent, glowed with a softer, more nuanced light. It was a Xylos who, as a young processor, had witnessed the unquantifiable value of memory preservation and had since championed integrative termination protocols within its own rigid society. A Kthar trade lord, its clicking appendages now accompanied by fluid, expressive body language, negotiated not for raw materials, but for optimal comfort zone placement near newly colonized systems, arguing for the long-term societal benefits of emotional well-being. It was a Kthar whose own grandparent had found peace at the respite generations ago, leaving behind a legacy memory trace that continued to subtly influence clan decisions. Even a representative from a distant, highly aggressive insectoid empire, known for its brutal efficiency, was present. Its segments still bristled with latent energy, but its mandibles were unclasped, its antennae slightly lowered. This empire, having suffered a devastating plague that ravaged its elderly without the option of a dignified end, had reluctantly sought out a solace satellite. What they found there, in the quiet, respectful care, changed their understanding of both life and death, forcing them to reevaluate their own brutal methods of societal thinning. The Lumina, as always, were represented only by an ethereal, pulsating orb of pure light, hovering silently above the central dais. Yet, its vibrations were different now, a subtle, resonant frequency that xenopsychologists identified as a complex affirmation of shared sentience. The primary agenda of this confluence was not resource allocation, but the universal declaration of sentient dignity and cessation. It was a document drafted collaboratively by dozens of species, spearheaded by the Terrans and Thalians, outlining fundamental rights to comfort, memory, and respect in one's final moments. It was a direct challenge to the ancient efficiency directives that had once governed galactic life. During the debates, the Kthar trade lord, surprisingly, spoke passionately. We once viewed the cessation of an inefficient unit as a simple equation, but through the Terran example, we have learned that the variables of peace, of memory, of connection, yield an ultimate return that transcends quantifiable profit. A society that honors its dying, honors its living. The Xylos diplomat, with crystalline precision, added, "Our logical matrices now confirm that the integration of dignity protocols reduces systemic entropy in conscious populations. Optimal function is not merely about output, but about integrity of being. A life's final data stream, when handled with reverence, provides a pure informational legacy." The insectoid delegate, to the surprise of many, emitted a series of soft, mournful clicks. We discarded our elders. Without solace, our hive weakened, not from lack of numbers, but from the void left by unhonored lives. The Terran compassion taught us the true strength found in farewell. The declaration passed with overwhelming, unprecedented consensus. It marked a profound shift in galactic philosophy. Death was no longer solely a matter of biological function or economic calculation. It was a sacred, personal journey, recognized and honored by a multitude of species. The respite and its sister institutions had not eliminated suffering or the inevitability of death, but they had profoundly changed how suffering was navigated and how death was met. They had introduced the concept of grace into the cold, hard mechanics of galactic existence. Humanity, the cosmic janitors who had cleansed the void, had now become the galactic caregivers, tending to the ultimate human and alien vulnerability, not with force, but with profound tenderness, weaving a new, compassionate tapestry across the stars. Millennia unfurled, stretching like silk across the cosmic loom. The galaxy, once a cold expanse of utilitarian logic and detached resource management, had transformed, not into a utopia, for suffering and conflict still existed, but into a place profoundly touched by a single, peculiar species' unwavering commitment to compassion. The Galactic Hospice was no longer a single ship or even a network. It was an ingrained philosophical cornerstone, a universal right enshrined in interstellar law, taught to every young sentient being across the myriad cultures. On Earth, a tranquil, biodiverse planet humming with advanced but harmonious technology, a young human scholar named Kai sifted through ancient data archives, studying the foundational texts of the Galactic Hospice movement. He encountered the early debates, the dismissive alien responses, the sheer audacious optimism of Ambassador Elena Petrova and her team. It seemed almost impossible that such a monumental shift could have originated from something so simple, so human, the desire to comfort the dying. The Xylos now performed elaborate harmonic dissipations for their elders, ceremonies of profound beauty where light and sound were tailored to the individual's life, their unique energy patterns gently released and remembered in communal resonance chambers, enriching the collective in a way pure logic never could. Their ambassadors, while still precise, possessed a subtle warmth, a recognition of the emotional variables that made sentient life so complex and valuable. The Kthar, while still fiercely competitive, had integrated legacy preservation funds into their economic models. The dignity of their elders' passing was a metric of societal well-being, and they understood that the emotional stability fostered by compassionate care led to more robust, innovative, and loyal workforces. Their repurposing centers had largely faded, replaced by transition sanctuaries, where families could share final memories and honor individual contributions, creating a richer, more nuanced form of collective history. The Thalians, already deeply connected to life cycles, had refined their reintegration. Now, a Thalian elders merging with the bioship was a conscious, celebrated act of returning, filled with individually recalled memories broadcast to its beloved family members, enriching the collective consciousness with not just energy, but the individual tapestry of a life lived. Their vast ships served as mobile hospices themselves, their bioluminescent structures offering solace to countless alien species along their routes. Even the Lumina, those ethereal beings of light, occasionally manifested faint, complex nebulae that echoed the unique light patterns of peaceful Xylos dissolutions or the final joyous flashes of an insectoid elder finding solace. It was their silent, beautiful affirmation that even in the vastness of pure energy, the resonance of a life's compassionate end held meaning. The galactic definition of efficiency had been utterly redefined. It no longer solely meant maximizing output or minimizing waste. It now encompassed the efficiency of soul, the efficiency of emotional health, the efficiency of valuing every sentient spark. The inefficient were no longer discarded. They were cherished, for their very vulnerability had illuminated a deeper truth about galactic interconnectedness. Kai, the human scholar, closed his ancient datapad. He looked out from his biodome window at the serene earthscape, then up at the star-dusted sky. He imagined the vast, thriving network of hospices, of solace satellites, humming softly across the void. He pictured the countless hands, alien and human, offering comfort. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy not with the might of an armada, but with the quiet courage to care. They had not imposed their will, but offered a choice, a different perspective on the ultimate journey. And in doing so, they had woven a tapestry of tenderness across the cosmos, turning a galaxy once defined by its cold calculus into a place where every life, right to its very last breath, held intrinsic, unquantifiable, and sacred worth. The Galactic Hospice stood as humanity's true monument, not a tower of power, but a beacon of boundless compassion, forever shining its gentle light across the endless stars. If this powerful story of humanity's quiet fight for compassion and dignity across the stars resonated with you, hit that like button. Subscribe to HFY Warfare for more tales of humanity's unconventional victories and profound impact on the galaxy. And tell us in the comments below, what's the greatest mark you think humanity can leave on the cosmos?